Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to VR Revelations. It is February 21, the year of our Lord 2023, and it looks like things are continuing to develop here favorably for the Russians in the area of Bakhmut. We know that this is a focal point right now for the Russian forces as they are trying to capture Bakhmut here, where fighting has been going on for a while now, and that's because the Ukrainians have been putting a lot of forces into the city. I'm sure there are thousands upon thousands of dead Ukrainian soldiers and probably less Russian soldiers, but it has definitely been one of the more deadly conflicts in the war, a year in. So it looks like Ukraine could be potentially pulling out via an order from Zelensky himself, as we're going to be reading in the article. Now, Zelensky, he's been doubling down on protecting Bakhmut, calling it a fortress, a symbol of Ukrainian resistance, even though the West and the Western media has been trying to downplay the importance, military and strategic importance of Bakhmut for a while now, because it was pretty obvious from a while ago that, eventually Bakhmut would fall to the Russians, as I think that it was pretty obvious that Ukraine really never actually had a chance at resisting the Russians, let alone launching an offensive, right, to deliver the territories that Ukraine claims as its own. And so now we're seeing, reality is starting to hit these people that didn't think this was possible, but I think it was pretty obvious from the beginning that Ukraine would be no match for a world superpower such as Russia. And so the U.S. even warned Zelensky to pull his forces out of Bakhmut, and Zelensky refused. Again, he doubled down. I'm assuming he just figured, he had already put so much into it that they should really just try and keep holding. But now it looks like he might be getting ready to actually give the order to pull out these forces, which, it is what he should do, of course. If he doesn't pull them out, then his forces, are going to get encircled, and they'll either be killed if they resist capture, or they will become prisoners of war. So we're going to take a look at the article here, and you're going to see that they are going to mention these two towns up here north of Bakhmut, which is Yahitne and Berkivka, I believe they mention. And they are reporting on how the Russians just took those towns, and essentially this is pretty much completing the encirclement here. As you can see that all the major roads are pretty much blocked by Russia. And now the last remaining road, or whatever this is, a highway possibly, which here is actually numbered T0504, is also close to being intercepted. As a matter of fact, you'll see in the article that the Russians actually have the capability of getting close to this road here and blocking it off, but it seems like they are giving Ukraine an opportunity to pull out, or possibly it could be, it could be a move to try and draw the Ukrainian forces into thinking that they're providing a way out and then actually destroying them. So the Ukrainians definitely don't want to go down that road. There are some off-roads, I believe, and so it looks like that's going to be the only way for the Ukrainian forces to pull out of the city. Again, I'm no military expert or anything, but I have been reading these articles, and again, it's pretty obvious if you just look at the map here, what Ukrainians' options are of retreating. And so that's why I reported a couple of days ago that Ukraine actually gave the order to stop all aid from going in and out of the city. Essentially, they told them that they couldn't go back into the city because it was too dangerous. Now, previously, they could actually go into safe areas that the Ukrainian forces still controlled, right? Where I'm assuming there probably weren't a lot of missile attacks in those areas, but now the Russians are so close and, of course, within range, right, to pretty much hit anything they want in this whole area here, that they denied the aides from going into the city. And then I reported on how they were destroying some bridges, and then they were actually destroying documents in some government buildings. So now it looks like it's just up to Zelensky whether he's going to give the order, and we're going to read a little bit about that here. Again, this is a Greek website. Usually they are pretty unbiased, so let's go ahead and take a read from this article here. Ukrainian forces are evacuating civilians from the areas of Bakhmut they control as they prepare for the final act of the drama. The Ukrainian headquarters was moved out of the city, with Kyiv preparing the defensive shielding of Chasiz Yar and its surrounding, including Novomitrovka. So they're talking about Chasiz Yar. Here's Bakhmut right here, guys. And then if you just move towards the west over here, if you can see my cursor, you'll see that Chasiz Yar is right over here. Now, if I remember correctly, this town is actually higher up. It's more elevated than Bakhmut. So even if Ukrainian forces retreat, they'll still be able to launch artillery at the Russian forces in Bakhmut. Of course, we know that Bakhmut is pretty much entirely destroyed because of the wave of missile strikes that Russia has been launching relentlessly, even though the West was claiming a couple of months ago that Russia was running out of missiles, so that's a lie. They keep on producing a lot, and they have plenty more. So yeah, you can see that the Russians are actually close to Chasiz Yar, so they know that that would be where these Ukrainian forces would try to fall back to. And they've actually, they've been bombing Chasiz Yar, the area also. But yeah, they're definitely in a dangerous situation right now. I don't know how many thousands of Ukrainian soldiers could be in this area, but as you can see here, guys, they're pretty much inside of this ditch, of this red wave by the Russians. And if they don't pull out of here quickly and, way back, I mean, I don't know how back they could fall to. I'm guessing that, if they were to leave this whole area here around Chasiz Yar, then they would probably fall back to Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, since those are going to be the next major battles. But yeah, they're pretty much just waiting for Zelensky to give the order, and we'll actually read something about that here. So it continues, the Ukrainian headquarters was moved out of the city, with Kyiv preparing the defensive shielding of Chasiz Yar and its surroundings, including Novomitrovka. The loss of the settlements of Berkovka and Yahitne means that the city is also surrounded from the west. At the same time, Ukrainian units are being sent to Zaliznyasky and Mikovka areas as Kyiv fears a Russian advance in that direction as well. In the U.S., there is intense movement, with President Biden declaring that the next few days will be very difficult for Ukraine. Wagner's forces are advancing from the north and have almost reached the Azov industrial complex, which extends into the center of the city. The Wagnerites do not seem to find strong Ukrainian resistance. So it looks like Biden, as we read here, said the next few days will be very difficult for Ukraine. So he's sort of foreshadowing something that's going to be big news, which I would assume is probably the fall of Bakhmut. And I'm sure Biden, as he was over there with Zelensky and his advisors, they probably convinced Zelensky to, pull his troops out, and that, he's actually going to need those troops for later. And so he probably will give the order, but again, his arrogance could take over and just let his soldiers die in certain death before the Russians there in Bakhmut. So it goes on. According to the Russians, the Azov metal processing plant can be compared to Azovstal in terms of the sophistication of the attack. It has ungrounded facilities and mines tens of meters deep, which can be sheltered for Ukrainian personnel and their equipment. Okay, it looks like we have some video here, so I'll just play this video. Looks like it's some battles going on between Wagner units and Ukrainian units. Let me go ahead and turn the volume down here in case they're playing any music.
Блядь, рука, пизда. Попали? Куда? Наверное. Рука! Медик! Медик!
Сюда, пошел Забадина, пошел!
Турникет, пожалуйста.
Даю,
быстрей. Вот, сверху накладывай турникет!
Ходи! Так, побежи. Оружие, работаю, блядь! Сюда.
Это все, чувак. Чувак, это все. Все, чувак, он умер. Блять, идет поверху кто-то, пацаны. Поверху идет кто-то. Блять. Поверху. Пархом, крой. Крой, вверх. Вверх. Прямо на 12, пархом. Босс.
Что там?
Alright, guys, you can see the fighting there in the trenches. Very slow and, yeah, very methodical there. Probably not how a lot of us that have never been involved in a conflict like that thought it would actually look like, right? I mean, you have all these movies and all these things, but this is actually going on right now between the world superpowers, essentially. So it goes on here, is Wagner giving Ukrainian forces an escape route? Russian forces are deliberately leaving an escape route for Ukrainian units trapped in Bakhmut, Russian media reports. In particular, Russian forces do not control a particular highway, although they are close by and have the ability to do so. And again, I believe that highway is this one right here, guys. This yellow one here. The T0504. So you can see here they're pretty close. They can, just move in and capture it so that they can stop any Ukrainian forces from coming down that road. But again, is this bait, or are they actually being merciful to the Ukrainians still at this point in the war? So it goes on here. In particular, Russian forces do not control okay, I just read that. Russian media cites Ukrainian sources as saying that Ukrainians located in the city of Bakhmut suspect that Wagner PMC did not deliberately put under its control a supply and escape route of the armed forces of Ukraine. Are the Russians waiting for the Ukrainians to leave on their own? So we have another video here of some mortar strikes, guys. I'm not going to go ahead and play all the videos right now. I was trying to keep this one short here. But yeah, look here. Zelensky announces his departure from Bakhmut, the withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from Bakhmut, where fierce battles have been raging for months with huge losses of soldiers on both sides, is announced by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who asserted that the Ukrainian army will defend the city, but not with any cost. In his statement to the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera, Zelensky seems to be beginning to share the advice of many Westerners, especially Americans, who urge him to leave Bakhmut. Again, they've been urging him for a couple of weeks now, and he actually came on a press conference and doubled down, saying that Bakhmut, was essentially really important for the Ukrainians. and it looks like they are close here to pulling out entirely there. It's not a particularly big city, so you can see this is what Zelensky said. He's now coping right with the reality here, and he's trying to pretty much tell himself that, it's not that bad of a loss. So he says it's not a particularly big city. Remember, he called it a fortress, an impenetrable fortress, literally a couple of days ago. In fact, like several others in Donbass, it has suffered a lot of damage from the Russians. It is important for us to defend it, but not at any cost and not if everyone is going to be killed. Zelensky said, although Bakhmut is considered a city of extremely critical importance for the development of military conflicts in the Donbass and especially in the Donetsk region. So just the area where Bakhmut is located is a very strategic and focal point for anyone essentially that wants to control that area. Now, of course, there's different variables, right, that play its part as to why that is. It could have to do with the terrain, right, with the ease of access to the other areas, in that region, right? So it could be based on the geographic location of Bakhmut, the city itself, the structures, and all of these things. But as we see here, it is a very strategic and important city there. So this is definitely going to be a big morale booster for Russian forces, and it's also going to demoralize the Ukrainians, right, and its allies, who have pretty much been keeping the Ukrainians in the fight. The way is opened for the other strategically important cities such as Kramatorsk and Slovyansk. Again, we can see that once they take Bakhmut, they'll probably proceed towards Chasiz Yar here, which is, within range already of the Russian forces. And then once, I'm assuming because they also this major offensive that they just launched is also being aimed at taking Severodonetsk. So once they straighten out this line here, as you can see, the next objectives here are going to be Slovyansk and Kramatorsk. So anyways, that's going to be it for this video, guys. It does go on to talk about, I think, around 6,000 civilians that are still holding out in Bakhmut, and they actually mention in the article that, as I've mentioned previously before and covered in other Western articles, there's a lot of people that are actually staying behind purposely because they actually want to be freed by the Russian soldiers. So they actually wait there. They risk their lives, right? Not only do they risk, being harassed and possibly killed by Ukrainian forces out of anger, right? Because, they kind of look like traitors if they're waiting, for the Russians to liberate them. So they're putting their lives at risk that way, and then they're also putting their lives because at the same time, the Russian forces have to clear out the Ukrainian forces from those areas, so they are constantly bombing the area, and these people are essentially hiding out in the buildings, in the infrastructure, and this has happened in other towns. It has been reported, and you'll see the Russian soldiers, come into town, and then these people come out of hiding, and then they're relocated somewhere deeper inside of Russia because, again, there are a lot of Russian people in these areas, right? That's been part of this whole internal conflict. And so it's pretty incredible. I think the article goes on to mention that it's like 6,000 civilians there. God have mercy, and hopefully they will get the liberation they are looking for. Yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Anyways, I'll keep an eye out. Thank you for tuning in. Again, if you could give this video a like and subscribe, I would appreciate it. And remember, the truth is stranger than fiction. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.